Hello everyone, my name is Ghazala Ansari and today I'll be presenting on the topic social movements amongst marginalized communities, their forms and objectives specifically. So I'd like to begin with a powerful thought. Social movements are the heartbeat of democracy, giving voice and power to those historically silenced. This quote beautifully captures the essence of my presentation that social movements are not just protests, they are transformative for us that brings visibility, dignity, and justice to communities, often left unheard. So, let's move on to our presentation. The very first slide deals with, so this was my quote that I had to start with. We start with introduction, which is what is the catalyst change that is required, or what is the initiative that will actually pull up the process. So, social movements amongst marginalized communities in India represent collective struggles for justice, equality, and empowerment. Groups like Dalits, Adivasis, women, OBCs, and religious minorities have long faced discrimination, exclusive, and denial of rights. So, these movements have worked to challenge inequality, to promote justice, to achieve empowerment, and transform education into a more inclusive and equitable space. So, education has always been both a goal and a means in these movements, helping communities gain awareness, confidence, and self determination. We move on to meaning of marginalization. So marginalization generally refers to the process of pushing certain groups to the edges of society, denying them access to resources, power, and opportunities. So marginalization is keeping people aloof from their actual needs and resources or power and opportunities. So these groups face discrimination, poverty, and social exclusion, making it difficult for them to access education, employment. Some of the key marginalized communities in India include the scheduled caste for Dalits, the scheduled tribes or Adivasis, the women, religious minorities, and people with disabilities. So, recognizing these groups helps us to understand that social structures that movement aim to change. Next slide is based on relationship between education and social movements. So, what's the relationship that comes after between education and the different movements that are played by these social reformers? So, education plays a dual and powerful role in social movements. First, education as a tool, it helps individuals question inequality or become aware of their rights and take informed action. Second, education as an outcome, in which movements often lead to reforms in policy, access, and inclusion, resulting in better educational opportunities. The next we deal with the key educational objectives. So what objectives are we aiming for? So those objectives would be that we should be moving towards ensuring equal access to quality education. We should be ending discrimination which is based on caste, creed, and gender. We should be reforming the curricula to reflect diverse histories and cultures. We should advocate affirmative action and reservation policies and promote empowerment programs like adult literacy and awareness programs. So, through these objectives, social movements will build both individual captaincy and community strength. We come on to the different major movements that have been brought about by different social reformers. The very first movement that we'll be talking and which is presented in my slide is the Dalit movement. So the Dalit movement was led by reformers like Jyotiba Phule and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This movement fought against caste-based discrimination. It established schools for Dalits, demanded free and compulsory education, and laid the foundation for reservation in education. The second movement was tribal or Adivasi movement, which is not here, but still I need to talk about it. So it focused on protecting tribal identity, land, and culture. They promoted ashram schools and Eklavya model schools and encouraged inclusion of tribal languages in the curricula. Then the next movement, which is there on my slide, which is women's movement. It championed equality and access to education for girls and women. Pioneers like Savitribai Phule opened the first school for girls, and later reforms promoted gender equality in education and policies. The next is backward class movements, which fought for educational and economic upliftment of the other backward classes, leading to reservation in schools, colleges, and governments. And there were some minority movements also, which focused on preserving cultural identity and education. Uh, Rights of religious minorities through establishment of minority schools and universities. So together, these movements laid the foundation of educational inclusion in India. We come on to the different forms of social movements. The very first social movements take many forms, each reflecting a different approach to change. So, the very first one is the reformative movement. These aim for gradual change through awareness and education. So, examples like Ambedkar's Dalit movement and the 19th century women's reform movement, which fought for widow remarriage and girls' education. So the impact that was laid with these movement were that it was the establishment of school and inclusive curricula and awareness on social justice. Then there was a movement called as the revolutionary movement, which seeked radical social change. It was for Periyar's self-respect movement, and the Dalit Panthers challenged caste hierarchy and demanded equality in education and employment. So the impact that was left was mobilization of students, introduction of affirmative action, and assertion of identity. The next was the rivalist movement. These movements focus on cultural identity, traditional values, and heritage that were suppressed due to colonization or mainstream dominance. So, the rivalist movement basically aimed to revive suppressed cultural identities. Example, the Jharkhand movement and the Bodo movement among Adivasis promoted local language and indigenous education. The impact that was laid down by these movements was inclusion of tribal culture and knowledge in education. The next is the socio-religious movement. This movement was led by the Brahmo Samaj, the Arya Samaj, and Satyashodhak Samaj. Used religion to promote equality and education. The impact that was laid by this movement was spread of literacy, schools for women and lower caste, and moral education. Then comes the resistance and protest movements, wherein they use demonstration or legal action. For example, the Dalit agitation for school access or Adivasi protest against displacement. The impact that was laid was legal safeguards and reservation policies. The last one on my slide, which is modern initiatives like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and Total Literacy Campaign continue this legacy of create increasing literacy, gender equality, and inclusive education. Next, I move on with my slide on objectives of social movements. So, the objectives of these movements are both social and educational, aiming for just an equal society. So, they strive towards eradicating inequality and discrimination, breaking caste and gender barriers, achieving educational equality through free and compulsory education, schooling, scholarships, and adult education, also promoting awareness and empowerment, as Dr. Ambedkar urged to educate, agitate, and organize. The next is preserve cultural identity, ensuring tribal and minority languages as a part of education. The next is securing political and economic representation through reservation and inclusion in policy making. The last one is promoting gender equality, which moves on with enabling women's participation in education and leadership. So, all these objectives continue to guide modern social reform efforts. We come on to how is education playing a big role in empowerment. So education, a role of education in empowerment. Education is the heart of empowerment. It transforms individuals and entire communities by encouraging critical thinking and awareness, enabling social mobility and equality, providing a political voice and representation, promoting national integration and shared values, embedding justice, dignity, and compassion in future generations. So, simply putting, education is not just about literacy, it's about liberation. In spite of having a long journey, we still have being the challenges being faced by the society. So there is so the challenges that that are remaining here are still we have poor access to quality education, especially in rural and tribal areas. We have persistent caste, gender, and regional disparities. We have high dropout rates among marginalized students, and there is underrepresentation in higher education, continued stereotyping and discrimination in schools and colleges. These challenges remind us that journey towards educational equity is still ongoing. So I conclude with my last slide on which says unfinished pursuit of education. So, social movements among marginalized communities have transformed India's social and education fabric. They challenged hierarchy, expanded access, and redefined education as a means of liberation. Leaders like Ambedkar, Phule, and Periyar showed us that true progress comes when education reaches every child, regardless of birth or background. While much have been achieved, the struggle for complete education um, and equality continues. So, education itself remains the most powerful and social movement, which is breaking barriers, awakening minds, and shaping a more just future. So, thank you, teachers. This was all about my project on forms and objectives of the marginalized communities. Thank you so much.